Pop quiz. What do Miley Cyrus, Zac Efron, Zendaya, and Kurt Russell all have in common? They all kicked off their careers as Disney kids. That's right, as hard as it is to believe, Kurt Russell didn't just come out of the gate being the badass we all know him today. Once upon a time, he was one of Disney's biggest stars, appearing in gimmicky comedies like The Computer, Wore Tennis Shoes, The Barefoot Executive, and Now You See Him, Now You Don't. He shared such a close personal relationship with Disney that the last words he ever wrote was the name Kurt Russell on a piece of paper. Nobody is quite sure what he meant. But after being given a shot to play Elvis Presley in a TV movie made by a young up-and-comer named John Carpenter, Kurt made the transition from goofy boy next door to certified leading man. He didn't leave the charm behind, though. That charisma combined with his good looks and some of the best hair a man could ask for have ensured Kurt's still a much sought-after movie star. While we can go on all day about his incredible filmography, we're here to focus on two of his most iconic performances. Quickly following his impressive turn as Elvis, Kurt re-teamed with Carpenter for the thriller Escape from New York, in which he played stone-faced convict Snake Plissken. Some years later, and following another team-up for the horror classic The Thing, Russell and Carpenter reunited for the decidedly different action comedy Big Trouble in Little China, where Kurt plays lovable trucker Jack Burton.
Jack Burton, me.
The two movies and characters couldn't be more different, but they're perfect showcases for the one-of-a-kind former Disney kid who'd we'd want on our side no matter what the situation. So now it's up to us to tackle a varied round one personality. The most drastic difference between these two characters is in the personality department. While both know how to take charge and kick ass when the occasion calls for it, they've got very different attitudes when going about it. Snake is the very definition of a loner, reluctant hero, doesn't even come close to describing the brooding career criminal who is thrust into a perilous rescue mission in the bombed-out prison island known as Manhattan. Snake has no real loyalties to anyone but himself and doesn't play well with others.
You gonna kill me now, Snake?
I'm too tired.
Even the hints of humanity within him are fairly brief. That said, he's just too cool. With his cowboy swagger and soft-spoken intensity, Snake is pretty much the ultimate anti-hero. Far, far on the other side of the personality spectrum is Jack Burton, a carefree trucker who loves life on the road, a couple of cold ones, and his beloved rig, the Pork Chop Express. Not unlike Snake, he's forced into a wild situation against his will, but Jack's a much more optimistic guy, has an eye for the ladies, and approaches even the weirdest challenges with a happy-go-lucky smile on his face. Still, he's a bit of a loner, like Snake, and walks off into the sunset. The road is his mistress. If Snake is the badass most dudes wish they could be, Jack's the best bud every guy would love to have as a wingman. Kurt shines in both roles, playing Snake with just the right amount of macho cool while clearly having the time of his life as Jack, creating a lovable lunkhead with a heart of gold. The two are so distinct, yet equally memorable, making this round an impossible task. We can't pick one over the other. Verdict? Draw. Round two, appearance. Given to both of these men, they like to be as unencumbered as possible, hence both of them go with a simple tank top as their signature look. The easier it is to break noses at a moment's notice. But they're not very similar beyond that. Snake goes with a simple black shirt and camo pants while rocking his signature eye patch and toting his trusty hand cannon, which was reportedly very, very heavy. He just looks like the quintessential man on a mission, and you can't imagine Snake any other way. The same could be said for Jack Burton, who stands out in a crowd with his unforgettable Fu Manchu shirt. While Snake's grim personality is reflected in his simple duds, Jack's brighter outlook on life is similarly reflected in his entertaining style. Hell, even when he's wearing lipstick, he still looks pretty cool.
You know what old Jack Burton always says at a time like this?
Jack doesn't have as awesome of a signature weapon as Snake does, but he's pretty handy with a machine gun or the trusty knife tucked in his boot. And while we do cherish Jack's visage, Snake Plissken cuts too iconic of a figure to ignore, and we haven't even mentioned the suggestive snake tattoo. Verdict: snake. Round 3, durability. Here we find, for all their differences, Snake and Jack share yet another admirable trait. They both take a licking and keep on ticking. Neither of these guys can be considered a traditional hero, but because they're both stubborn bastards, they just can't be taken down. Not easily, anyway. One of the cool things about Snake is that we barely know anything about him. His history is often hinted at, but in such vague terms that we can only assume he was equally as intimidating on the outside world as he is when we meet him.
Make Plissken in my camp?
Everyone's heard of him, so his exploits must be legendary, and a common refrain in the film is, I thought you were dead. But anyone who knows Snake should know not to trust those rumors. The guy is practically unstoppable. Check out how he not only withstands a brutal beating from a 7-foot Neanderthal, but comes out of the bout victorious. It's also worth noting he goes through all of this while carrying around 2 microscopic bombs in his neck. Suicide Squad, who? Not to be outdone, Jack Burton survives many a dicey encounter, some more life-threatening than others. Fighting ancient demons is no cakewalk, but to be fair, Jack does have a little more help than Snake does. He's got a whole squad on his side after all, but that doesn't mean we should shortchange him. He may not be the brightest bulb, but he sure knows how to get out of a jam. Still, I think we'd rather be on the side of Snake, who might not really want you by his side, but he's just a much safer bet. Verdict: Snake. Round 4, friends and allies. As you know, a guy like Snake doesn't make friends easily, and those that come even close probably don't remain friends for long. But back against the wall, he's got to welcome some kind of assistance, and luckily he finds some like-minded compatriots within the walls of NYC. Ernest Borgnine plays the good-natured cabbie who helps Snake traverse the dangerous streets.
Where you going, buddy?
And leads him to an old associate, Brain. Played by the forever awesome Harry Dean Stanton. Brain and Snake aren't exactly on friendly terms, but you can't really pick and choose in this landscape. Brain's main squeeze is the sexy and deadly Maggie, and who better than Carpenter's old flame Adrienne Barbeau. In another lifetime, you get the sense Snake and Maggie would have been a hell of a team, but unfortunately this timeline has no such good tidings for these two hard cases. Jack Burton is a much more sociable fella, and while his brash personality may not be for everyone, he's got folks who will watch his back. Chief among them is Wang, his love-struck, romantic, and quick-thinking pal. One of the amusing things about the movie is that it's actually Wang who's sort of the real hero, with Jack acting more of his comedic sidekick as opposed to the other way around. Wang has a whole host of people who assist him and Jack in their mission, and when the final showdown arrives, they're all fighting the good fight against the forces of evil. Of course, there's something of a love interest for Jack in the eye-catching form of Kim Cattrall's Gracie. She and Jack are sweet on each other for a brief time, but as mentioned, Jack's true loves are the Road and the Pork Chop Express, who Jack really can't stop talking about.
Yeah, well, the way I see it doesn't mean we shouldn't ask, like, where's my truck?
It's a tough call, this one. The gang in New York is as ragtag as it gets, so it's hard not to root for these lovable losers. The group in San Francisco isn't as gritty, but they have a lot of moxie and provide ample backup for Jack. Actually, sometimes it's more like he's providing backup for them.
Hollow? Hollow. Fuck it.
This is another one where it's too tough to choose, so we're chalking it up as a draw. Verdict: draw. Round 5, adversaries. If it's tough for Snake to make friends, maybe he can take solace in the knowledge he has no problem making enemies. Sent practically against his will to New York by a smirking, smug Lee Van Cleef, superb casting by the way, Snake finds foes everywhere he goes.
Come out now.
Of course, the main antagonist is the unofficial boss of the whole island, the Duke, played with fearsome coolness by Isaac Hayes. The Duke arrives relatively late in the film, but makes a hell of an impression, as does his psychotic right-hand man, Romero.
You touch me, he dies. If you're not in the air in 30 seconds, he dies. If you come back in, he dies.
In Big Trouble, Jack Burton is up against more than mere mortals. He's fighting demigods with magical powers. The main baddie is Lopan, an ancient sorcerer who has an intimidating crew on his side, including the dreaded Three Storms. Despite the darkness of his plot, Lopan is actually a pretty affable guy when he wants to be.
It's a good knife.
He's played by the immortal James Hong in some terrific makeup and chewing the scenery for all it's worth. The Three Storms aren't slouches in the entertainment department either, and when you throw in some truly otherworld enemies, you've got a very tall hill to climb for a guy like old Jack.
Shut up, Mr. Burton.
While we love the Duke of New York, he is a number one after all.
You're a number one.
We have to admit that the villains in Big Trouble are immensely daunting. All the more impressive that Jack's reflexes save the day.
It's all in the reflexes.
Verdict: Jack. Round 6, quotes. Gotta love the best quotes portion of these shows, especially when it comes to legends like Snake and Jack. Even when the chips are down, Jack knows how to rip a perfect one-liner.
Hey, you never know till you try. 2,000 years and he can't find one broad to fit the bill. Come on, Dave. You must be doing something seriously wrong. Feel pretty good. And I'm not scared at all. I just feel kind of invincible.
Naturally, Jack is a lot more talkative than Snake and has a more nimble sense of humor, but don't think Snake is dead just yet. You know that never turns out to be true.
Man should remember his past. Who are you?
We'd make one hell of a team, Snake.
The name's Plissken.
While we love that Snake's strong but silent type routine ensures that every word counts, how can we not go with good old Jack Burton here, whose verbal reflexes are just as solid as his physical ones?
What was that?
6.9 on the Richter scale. Hang on!
Verdict: Jack. Round 7, overall movie. None of these categories have been easy, and here we arrive at the most difficult one yet. We know how first-rate these guys are, despite their differences, but how about the movies they inhabit? It's our own fault we chose to take on such an overwhelming task. Both films were very formative for countless people, especially us 80s kids, and like their protagonists, they choose very divergent paths to achieve their status as genre classics. You could say the films take on the personalities of their heroes. Escape from New York is quite a dark ride filled with foreboding imagery and frightening ideas. It's suspenseful throughout, but not without some shrewd humor. The veteran cast is spot on, the visuals are palpably bleak, and the dismal world that it's set in is one we completely buy into from the get-go. Perhaps most crucially, it introduced Kurt Russell as a leading man to be reckoned with, proving those Disney days were long gone. Big Trouble in Little China is a much more lighthearted affair, similarly taking on the personality of its lead by presenting a fun romp with plenty of bravado and confidence. Kurt is just aces in the film, and the entire ensemble is committed to every ridiculous scene. It's not always easy to blend action, comedy, and horror into one pot, but leave it to John Carpenter to knock it out of the park. Since it's so impossible to pick a favorite, we have to go with the old desert island scenario. Which one of these could we absolutely not live without? While Big Trouble in Little China is a joy to behold, Escape from New York is just a proper classic within the genre with one of the most formidable anti-heroes in all cinema. We love you, Big Trouble, but we just love being trapped in New York a little more. Verdict: Snake. Final verdict: Snake Plissken. And there you have it. The man who just will not die comes out triumphant once again. But as you know as well as we do that both of these guys are unrivaled bad boys who will always have a special place in our hearts. Now it's our turn to walk or drive stoically into that good night. This is the Pork Chop Express, signing off.
Just remember what old Jack Burton does when the earth quakes and the poison arrows fall from the sky and the pillars of heaven shake.